Karen said my daughter was faking her disability. Then the MRI played in court. They say you can't argue with science. Karen Beckman tried anyway. She stood there, arms folded, sunglasses glinting in the sun, and told my disabled daughter, that she was faking it for attention. She said our front ramp was unnecessary, her chair was a prop, and our permit was fraudulent. What she didn't know was that I had a sealed envelope in my hand. Inside it, the MRI scans that had just been admitted into evidence. Scans that would be shown on a courtroom projector in less than 3 hours. Part 1. You never forget the moment someone looks at your child like she's a liar. It was a Saturday morning, sky wide and clear, birds yelling like they owned the place, and all I wanted was to plant a couple azaleas with my daughter. Instead, I watched a woman with a clipboard accuse my 14-year-old of faking her disability in front of the entire block. Her name was Karen Beckman, president of the Willow Ridge Neighborhood Standards Committee. Not the HOA, mind you, because legally, there wasn't one. But she'd printed the title on laminated tags, carried a whistle like she was refereeing the suburbs, and handed out citations like they were candy on Halloween. Our house was her latest obsession. The ramp I'd built out front, out of character with community design, the automatic gate for my daughter's wheelchair noise pollution, even our mailbox, a steel one I'd installed to keep mail from soaking in the rain, had been labeled visually disruptive. But this time, she didn't come with paper. She came with venom. Alyssa was sitting under the shade tree. She loves the outdoors, even if her legs don't. Born with a rare nerve condition. She's had 9 surgeries since age 5. Her lower spine never developed properly. She's not paralyzed, but she's in constant pain. Her braces help stabilize her legs, and her wheelchair supports her when standing's too much. She was sketching a robin when Karen marched up the sidewalk, phone in hand. "What are you doing?" Karen snapped. Alyssa blinked, confused. "Drawing. Young lady. I saw you walk yesterday. Don't play games." I looked up from the mulch bag in my hands. "Excuse me," I said. Stepping between them, Karen pointed her phone at my daughter. Caught her on video. Standing for at least 30 seconds. Clear as day. "You're using that chair to skip rules." Alyssa's face collapsed into horror. I was Dad. I was just leaning." "That ramp," Karen hissed, "was approved under ADA compliance. But if she's not really disabled, then it's a violation. Fraud, even. And I will be reporting this." My fingers curled so tight around the bag of mulch it split at the seam. Dirt spilled across the walkway. "Karen," I said, voice like steel, "you're accusing a child." "I'm enforcing standards," she said. "No more fake pity props." "The HOA." "There is no HOA," I snapped. "You're just a woman with a clipboard and a God complex." "I have documentation," she said, smirking. I reached into the front pocket of my work pants and pulled out the envelope I hadn't meant to open until court. It was sealed, official, from St. Joseph Medical Center. It held Alyssa's latest MRI scans, her pain, her truth printed in film and burned to disc. It was the evidence in the hearing we were scheduled to attend that very afternoon to challenge the fine Karen had imposed on us for unauthorized construction. "You want documentation," I said. "You'll see it in court." Karen walked off with the same smugness she wore every time she made someone cry. She didn't know she was standing on the edge of her own downfall, but I knew. I saw it in Alyssa's trembling hands as she picked up her sketch pad. I saw it in my own reflection in the window. Rage coiled behind my eyes like a storm waiting for permission. Later that morning, we arrived at the county courthouse. Small building, brick exterior, rows of benches that smelled like lemon pledge and dread. The courtroom was more civil affairs than law and order, but for us it felt like a reckoning. Karen was already there, sitting 2 rows ahead, clipboard still in hand. Wearing a beige power suit that screamed, "I read legal blogs and bully cashiers." She didn't look at us, just whispered something to a man beside her, her witness. I assumed. He looked like a retired dentist with a fake badge in his wallet. The clerk called the case Willow Ridge Neighborhood Committee v. Cross Family regarding non-permitted accessibility modification and property deception. I almost laughed. Deception? You're about to learn the cost of that word, Karen. When the judge entered, Karen launched into her performance. She clicked through photos on a projector, our ramp, the gate, even a still of Alyssa reaching for a wind chime while standing. I am not anti-disability, Karen said, all honey and fangs. But the law protects the truly impaired. If this family is using disability as a shield to bypass neighborhood aesthetic codes, then I believe respectfully that the court should consider rescinding the ramp. The judge looked at me. Mr. Cross, your response, I stood slowly, pulled the envelope from my coat, set it gently on the podium. Your Honor, I said, this is Alyssa's MRI. I handed it to the bailiff, who brought it to the judge. These scans show underdevelopment in her lumbar region, documented since she was born, accompanied by nerve compression, bone density loss, and joint instability. That chair, that ramp. They're not props. They're lifelines. Karen scoffed. Kids adapt, I turned. She's had 9 surgeries. You ever watch your child scream after spinal injections? Karen's mouth closed. She wears braces, takes medication that makes her nauseous. Some days, she can walk a few steps. Other days, she can't sit up without crying. That's what you saw. Ms. Beckman, her, fighting through pain, not faking it. The judge leaned forward. Is the MRI dated and signed? Your Honor, I said, and accompanied by statements from 3 pediatric specialists. Alyssa sat beside me, silent. Then, without prompting, she raised her hand. May I speak? The judge nodded. Alyssa wheeled herself forward. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. I'm not broken, she said, but I hurt every day, and pretending I don't just to make someone else comfortable, that's exhausting. She looked at Karen. You didn't ask. You assumed. Then she turned to the judge and rolled back to my side. I'd never been prouder. The judge took a moment before speaking. In light of the medical evidence and personal testimony, he said, this court finds that the accessibility modifications were lawful, necessary, and protected under ADA regulations. This committee has no legal authority to enforce construction compliance, nor did it demonstrate cause for concern. He paused. Furthermore, I am referring this case for review under possible discrimination guidelines. Karen's pen dropped from her fingers. Outside the courtroom, reporters had gathered. Someone had tipped them off, and Karen, she wasn't ready for that part. A journalist asked her if she still stood by her accusations. She walked away. Another asked if she regretted calling a child a fraud. She kept walking, but the moment was captured. The whole world saw her face, and the backlash was just beginning. Part 2. I didn't sleep the night after the hearing, not because I was afraid, but because I was finally angry enough to stop holding back. Karen Beckman hadn't just humiliated my daughter in public, she'd made a game out of our pain, weaponizing her clipboard like a badge and hoping no one ever asked to see the paperwork behind her authority. Well now, someone had, and what we found was rot. 2 days after the judge dismissed the case and referred it for discrimination review, I got a call from the county compliance office. The voice on the other end, Ms. Herrera, sounded tense but curious. We've had several complaints about Ms. Beckman, she said, but this is the first with documented evidence. I offered to send her the MRI files, the court transcript, and the HOA citation copies. She accepted, and before the call ended, she asked something I hadn't expected. Did you know Willow Ridge doesn't have a registered HOA? I blinked. You're sure? She sighed. There was one. It dissolved 12 years ago when the original management company pulled out. Unless it's been reestablished through county filing, there's no legal enforcement power in that neighborhood. So Karen's entire Neighborhood Standards Committee is a fiction, she said, and possibly an illegal one, depending on what she's been collecting or threatening. That was all I needed to hear. By evening, I'd built a timeline of every citation Karen had issued to our house since we moved in 6 months ago. $175 for non-compliant front ramp, $90 for unsanctioned curbside pickup, $50 for improper decorative lights, $200 for unauthorized medical gate installation, all labeled with WRNSC, Willow Ridge Neighborhood Standards Committee, all mailed from her own address. Every single payment demand was made out to a PayPal account under the name Karen B. Wellness Civic. I cross-checked it against the HOA registry. No match. I called 3 neighbors. They'd received identical citations. One, a widowed Army vet named Paul, had paid over $600 to avoid litigation. Another, a Filipino-American couple, had been warned about unregistered cultural lawn items and told they might face community removal. And every letter was signed K. Beckman, Enforcement Officer. Not once had any of us seen a vote, a meeting, a formal election, or a registration. She wasn't a president. She was a fraud. Miles, my brother-in-law and civil rights attorney, came down that weekend. When I showed him the folder, he leaned back, whistling low. She's impersonating a regulatory body and issuing unlawful fines, he said. If she did this in more than one neighborhood, we're looking at patterned abuse of authority. He drafted a complaint to the State Office of Consumer Protection that same night. While he typed, Alyssa sketched at the kitchen table. I want to draw her, she said quietly. David looked up. Karen, no. Alyssa said, pencil tracing, slow across the page. The look on her face when she realized she was wrong. We all laughed. A little dark, but honest. Meanwhile, online, the story spread. A blogger who covered disability rights reposted the court clip. It reached 2.1 million views within 72 hours. This HOA leader accused a child of faking disability, then got exposed by an MRI in court. The comments poured in. My autistic son got cited for noise disruption by someone just like this. When will these fake neighborhood tyrants be held accountable? That girl is a hero. But the most important comment was from a woman named Lisa R., who wrote she did the same thing to us in 2019. Different town, same methods. We tracked her down. Lisa Romero lived 2 counties over, in a neighborhood called Amber Pines. She told us that Karen had moved there for a year after a divorce, claimed to be organizing local standards in the absence of a formal HOA. She fined me $150 for having a raised garden bed, Lisa said it wasn't approved. Told my neighbor that her daughter's service dog violated noise limits. Lisa had filed a complaint back then, but with no real proof. Nothing happened. Karen eventually moved, but the pattern was clear. Do you still have the letters, I asked. She did. Same letterhead, same W, R, N, S, C, seal, same PayPal address. Miles filed a second report, this one with the State Civil Rights Commission and the ADA Advocacy Unit. This is more than fraud, he said. She's targeting disabled individuals, people of color, and veterans using fake rules to pressure them out of their homes. By the end of the week, we had 8 families come forward, all with similar stories, all with documentation. And every time we found a new one, Alyssa would quietly say she thought no one would speak up. But I screamed. Just quietly. Then came the news I didn't expect. Karen filed a counter-complaint, accusing me of slander and civil incitement. Her legal filing claimed I had damaged her reputation as a volunteer community leader, and that public backlash had caused emotional distress. She demanded $25,000 in damages. Miles chuckled when he read it. She has no case. Still, the gall, the absolute delusion. But it gave us something valuable, proof that Karen believed her power was real, that she thought she deserved it. The hearing for her counter-complaint was scheduled for 3 weeks later. In the meantime, we collected more. A retired city planner confirmed no HOA was listed in Willow Ridge. A handwriting expert validated her signature across fake citations. A forensic accountant traced more than $38,000 in unauthorized payments into her PayPal since 2020. And Miles, he contacted a local ADA enforcement attorney who agreed to join the case pro bono. This isn't just about your daughter, the lawyer said. It's about every person who's ever had their disability questioned by someone too arrogant to ask. The week before the next hearing, I took Alyssa to the park. She rolled up to the pond and fed the ducks with one hand while holding her sketchbook in the other. "Do you think she'll go to jail?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe, but she'll be stopped." "Yes," I said. "She already is." Alyssa looked down at her sketch. It was a drawing of our house, but this time, no caution tape, no violations taped to the mailbox, just sunlight and our ramp. She smiled. "I want to paint this one." Part 3. When people talk about justice, they usually mean courtrooms, handcuffs, verdicts, but real justice. Sometimes it starts with a 14-year-old girl in a wheelchair handing her sketchbook to a news anchor on live TV. And sometimes it ends with the person who mocked her being investigated by 4 state agencies and sued in civil court. That's exactly what was happening to Karen Beckman. And it was happening fast. After the countersuit, Karen tried to retreat quietly. She canceled her neighborhood compliance walks. She stopped delivering citation slips. But by then, it was too late. The court had referred her countersuit for review after we submitted our full evidence packet. And the judge, he didn't just dismiss her claims. He called them an abuse of legal process. Miles filed a motion for sanctions, and Karen now owed our family $4,000 in attorney's fees and damages pending further proceedings. But the real unraveling began with a zip drive. It came from Paul, the veteran 2 houses down. He'd been quiet through most of this, keeping to himself since Karen fined him for a patriotic flag violation months earlier. But after hearing Alyssa speak in court, something shifted in him. He rang our doorbell, handed me the drive, and simply said, "She's been recording people." I blinked. "What do you mean security footage?" "Doorbell cam. She saved everything. For leverage. We plugged it in. Folders. Dozens. Labeled by address. Inside each one, clips of neighbors. Footage of packages being delivered. Sound bites of conversations caught through open windows. Karen had been running a full-scale surveillance operation without consent. One video showed her mocking Alyssa directly on a call to another board member. "She walks when no one's looking. You'll see. I'll catch her and take that ramp down. I swear it." Another folder contained a spreadsheet titled Compliance Escalation Plan. Names, homes, violations, and pressure tactics were listed. Ours labeled in red: disability as a shield, push legal, challenge authenticity, discredit father. We were stunned. This wasn't just prejudice. It was a targeted takedown strategy. Miles packaged the entire drive and submitted it to the State Civil Rights Board, the ADA Enforcement Division, and the Office of the Inspector General. He also sent it to the local press. That's when the real firestorm began. Channel 7 News ran a 5-minute segment, "Fake HOA President Caught Mocking Disabled Child," orchestrating pressure campaign. They aired Alyssa's MRI hearing footage juxtaposed with Karen's secret recordings. The contrast was devastating. Comments poured in. Calls to the news station overwhelmed their switchboard. People asked how they could help. Our story was no longer just local. It had gone national. In the days that followed, 3 families from neighboring towns came forward. Same citations, same Karen. The State Fraud Task Force opened a formal probe into Karen's use of public mail to deliver fraudulent fines. The ADA legal team moved to file a civil suit under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. And then, the bombshell dropped. The PayPal account Karen used to collect fake compliance fees, it had received over $62,000 in 3 years. From 42 households, all through threats, lies, and fake authority. Karen was summoned to appear for deposition in 2 separate cases. Miles and I were present for both. She arrived late the first day, no lawyer, hair disheveled, still clinging to a file folder labeled Community Integrity. When the ADA representative asked her if she had formal HOA authority, she replied, "Well, not officially, but someone had to do something." That sentence was entered into the record. When asked if she had ever impersonated a government official, She said, "I never claimed I was law. I just wanted respect." When she was asked why she targeted our family, she hesitated, because they made it about race and disability. There it was. The courtroom was silent. The ADA attorney looked at her calmly. "And when a girl is born with a permanent spinal condition that requires mobility aids, do you think that qualifies her as disabled?" Karen didn't answer, so the attorney said it for her. "She is. And your attempt to discredit that wasn't just heartless. It was illegal." Outside the courthouse, the press waited. We tried to leave quietly, but Alyssa was recognized. A woman from a cerebral palsy foundation approached us, weeping. "She's so brave," she whispered. "My son's chair was vandalized in a parking lot last year. He hasn't smiled since, but after watching your daughter speak, he asked to go to art camp again." Alyssa smiled, shy and soft. "He should." Karen's final mistake. Trying to leave the state, the night before her fraud hearing, she packed her car, drove west, but she didn't get far. She was stopped at a gas station in Amarillo and taken into custody. The charges now included wire fraud, civil rights intimidation, impersonation of a regulatory official, theft by deception, unlawful surveillance, abuse of process, retaliation against a person with disabilities. She posted bail, but the damage was done. Her name was now a national headline, and her victims. We weren't just pieces on her board anymore. We were the ones flipping it over. Part 4. There's a sound you don't hear until you've been through hell. It's not a gavel slamming or a headline dropping. It's the collective silence when someone finally loses the power they abused for far too long. And for Karen Beckman, that silence hit like a verdict from the sky. The courthouse overflowed the morning of her arraignment. Not because she was famous, but because people were angry. Neighbors, advocates, parents of disabled kids, even strangers who had followed the story online flew in to watch it happen. They didn't come for spectacle. They came for truth. Karen had been charged with a total of 6 felonies and 4 misdemeanors, all stemming from her fake HOA operations, illegal surveillance, civil rights violations, and financial fraud. But the most important charge, the one that made national headlines, was targeted intimidation against a protected individual under ADA law. That individual was my daughter. Alyssa sat beside me in court that day, wearing a navy blazer and the same braces Karen said she didn't need. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. Her presence alone reminded the court what was at stake. Karen looked different now. Not physically, though her face was pale, and her hair, normally curled and precise, hung limp like a deflated helmet. No, the difference was in her eyes. They no longer scanned the room for power. They scanned for exits. There were none. The prosecution laid it out like an autopsy. They showed the false citations, the hidden surveillance footage, the PayPal logs tracing thousands of dollars to her personal account, the emails instructing her fake committee to create pressure on visually non-compliant homes. And of course, the video of her confronting Alyssa and calling her condition a performance. The moment that played on the projector, the courtroom froze. Then the MRI image appeared silent, glowing, a single still frame of Alyssa's spine. No one said a word for nearly 20 seconds. Because no one needed to. Karen's lawyer tried to frame it as poor judgment. She was attempting to restore community standards. He said, she got carried away. But the ADA attorney, a black woman named Shonda Reed, cut through that like a scalpel. She didn't get carried away. She carried out a plan, a methodical, hateful scheme to target families she found inconvenient. And when confronted with proof of her cruelty, she retaliated. That's not community enforcement. That's oppression. Witness after witness came forward. Paul, the veteran, stood tall with his cane and read his statement aloud. She fined me for flying the same flag I fought for, then accused my PTSD dog of unauthorized animal activity. Lisa Romero testified. She told me my autistic son's chalk art was visual vandalism and threatened me with legal action if we didn't keep him inside. A man named Javier described how Karen ordered his wife to remove a traditional Filipino lantern display from their porch. She said our culture was causing discomfort to surrounding aesthetics. And finally, I was called. I didn't speak from rage. I spoke as a father. She didn't just harass my family. She told my daughter she was pretending to be broken. She used a clipboard to mask cruelty and a fake title to steal dignity. She used power she never earned to hurt people who were never a threat. I held up the MRI image, now framed, and she did it all while this existed. Karen didn't cry when the guilty verdict came in, but she did tremble. The judge read it slowly. Guilty on civil rights intimidation. Guilty on wire fraud and impersonation. Guilty on disability retaliation. Guilty on financial coercion through fraudulent authority. She was sentenced to 6 years in state prison, 2 to be served consecutively, restitution to every victim, community service after release specifically with ADA compliance training, and a permanent ban from participating in any housing or civic authority ever again. Outside the courthouse, a reporter asked me what justice felt like. I looked at Alyssa. She was sketching again, drawing the courthouse steps, this time with birds flying overhead. It doesn't feel like revenge, I said. It feels like sunlight after a long winter, but consequences didn't stop with her sentence. The state passed the Beckman Accountability Act 3 months later. It criminalized impersonating housing authority figures and strengthened protections for residents with disabilities under HOA or civic boards. Every county in the state was ordered to audit existing neighborhood enforcement entities. Over a dozen fake or expired HOAs were shut down within weeks. Karen's name was now printed at the top of every reform memo. She didn't just lose her power. She became the reason no one could ever misuse it again. Back in Willow Ridge, things changed. Not all at once, but little by little. The fake citations were formally voided. Every dollar Karen collected was returned. Our ramp, now fully permitted and celebrated, featured in a local article about accessible home design. Alyssa's drawing of it was framed and placed in the town library under the heading, "Truth Has Legs." Even when people say you don't, we formed a real neighborhood council. No presidents, no fines, just people helping people. Our first vote, unanimous support to install 3 new ramps for families in surrounding streets. Alyssa was asked to cut the ribbon. She didn't say much, just smiled and whispered, "Now everyone can get where they're going." Karen wrote one letter from prison, not to us, to the judge. She apologized for crossing lines, but never mentioned my daughter, never mentioned her name. And that, I think, says everything, because you can't apologize for what you never had the courage to see. But we saw her. We saw it all. And now the world does too. Part 5. Justice isn't the end of the story. It's the start of the one we should have been living all along. Karen Beckman went to prison, and the gavel finally fell. But what mattered most came after. Not the sentence, the rebuilding, because after years of whispers, fines, humiliation, and fear, we finally got to write the next chapter ourselves. The first thing we did was repaint the sidewalk. Literally, the kids in the neighborhood, led by Alyssa, of course, organized a mural project called What Belonging Looks Like. It wasn't some polished city commission, just a row of folding chairs, buckets of paint, and the kind of raw creativity that only comes when people feel free. Flags, birds, butterflies, kids in wheelchairs, ramps that looked like roller coasters, braces colored like lightning bolts, and in the center, a girl with curly hair sitting under a tree, sketch pad in hand, smiling like the world finally saw her. Alyssa. Our ramp stayed, not just as a structure, but as a symbol. Other families came to ask about it. Some wanted to build their own. Others just wanted to know how we'd done it, how we'd fought and won. We told them the truth with allies, with documentation, with never backing down, but most of all, with story. Because the moment we stopped hiding and started speaking, the cracks in Karen's illusion began to show. And once one family spoke, others did too. The neighborhood changed. People who once peeked from behind curtains now waved when they passed. Some knocked on our door just to say I'm sorry. Not because they'd done what Karen did, but because they hadn't stopped her. I told them the truth. We don't need guilt. We need grit. We need you here now, helping, and they did. Paul, the veteran Karen once fined for his flag, joined our newly formed Neighborhood Access Council, a group we created to make sure accessibility and inclusion weren't just buzzwords but policy. He helped install benches with armrests, ramps at the community hall, new crosswalk timers that gave more time for people with mobility issues. His flag now flies from the community center wall, next to a framed version of Alyssa's MRI scan, alongside the caption, "These are the facts. Both deserve to be seen." Alyssa changed too. Not overnight, but slowly, strongly. She walks a little taller, draws with more color, speaks at schools, libraries, and even town halls. They invited her to keynote Disability Inclusion Day at the State House. She opened with one sentence. "My legs don't work the way yours do, but my voice carries just fine." They gave her a standing ovation, and when she rolled off stage, she whispered to me, "I want to write a book someday." "You already are," I said. "Every step forward is a page." Miles, our civil rights lawyer in Family Rock, was offered a position leading a new statewide task force on HOA abuse and fraud. He accepted. But before he moved, he handed me a folder titled Karen Beckman Case Legacy Materials, inside templates, guides, letters, filing instructions. He looked me in the eye and said, "If it happens to someone else, you'll know what to do." We turned that folder into a public toolkit, available in print and online, free for anyone facing HOA harassment, disability discrimination, or neighborhood intimidation. It's now been downloaded over 70,000 times. Karen's house was sold, not auctioned, just it passed quietly. The family who bought it, a single mom with 2 boys, one of whom uses a hearing aid and service animal. She told me they'd been pushed out of their last neighborhood for being too disruptive. Now they're on the mural, too. The boys helped paint sunflowers around Alyssa's tree. There was one last moment I didn't expect. 6 months after sentencing, I got a letter from Karen. It wasn't long. She didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't admit guilt beyond things I did wrong, but she said something I never thought she'd say. "You didn't just protect your daughter. You showed a lot of us what courage looks like." I read it twice, then tucked it into a drawer. Not to forget, but to remind myself some people bend, some break, some try to rebuild. But we didn't wait for her. We rebuilt without her, with our daughter, with our neighbors, with the truth. And every time Alyssa rolls down that mural-lined sidewalk, braces gleaming in the sun, sketch pad under her arm, I think Karen thought she could erase a girl with a flagrant lie. Instead, that girl became the reason no one would ever get erased again. Let them scoff. Let them call your pain an exaggeration. Let them wave clipboards and throw fines and try to bury the truth. Then hand them the scan, hand them the facts, hand them the mic, and when they can't speak, speak louder. Because justice isn't a gavel. It's a girl in a chair, holding a sketchbook, smiling through steel. The end.